This is meant to be a discussion about a really important topic now, capital projects, right? And we are just seeing with the statute changes, these projects are growing in size, they're growing in complexity, they're certainly growing in cost. And now more than ever, building a team in the right team to get through it, to plan it, and to implement it is critical. Today, I'm excited, I'm overjoyed to have a group of experts in the field to talk turkey to all of us about what's really happening out there. So I want to thank everybody. We're going to do intros in a second here. But again, what are we talking about today when we talk about a capital project? Let's just set the table for everybody so we understand. We're going to use the term capital project today in terms of any project that involves atypical dollars, not recurring, not operational. So think about that pool remodel, a lobby, hallway interior finishes, waterproofing, mechanical upgrades, things that are really big dollars and just are not typical for volunteer boards to take on and contract in their daily life. It's not typical for them. Okay, so as you think about what you're hearing today in your particular project or your particular need, everything is on the table, from structural to interior finishes. Okay, with that, I want to introduce the team. And Cesar, I'll start with you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you guys? Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you guys for being here, so we can share some of our knowledge and experience that we've accumulated for the past, in my case, 28 years. My name is Cesar Soto. I am the principal and founder of Paramount Consulting and Engineering. I am a structural engineer by education and background, and I've accumulated the majority of my experience in the building envelope world. Again, working, in companies such as IBA Consultants, and then now Paramount Consulting, 2010 to the present. And again, our main goal is to literally, like I tell people sometimes, I have to use these analogies, is we are the engineers of your building. We are the ones that are going to tell you what is wrong with your building, and literally provide you guidance as to the problems that you're seeing and how to properly address those problems. And again, it's very important to, for people to understand what's happened in our environment is that a lot of our buildings were not attended to for the past 34 years. And it's like I tell people, nobody lasts 20, 30, 40 years without going to the doctor. And now they are being forced to go to the doctor. And now all of these issues are coming to light. And we are bringing those issues to light. But you need a professional to tell you what those issues are.
I love that, Cesar. And now you're going to be Dr. Soto forever in my head. Audrey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Audrey Ortiz with Coast to Coast General Contractors. Just quickly about myself first. I am a licensed CAM. I have 15 years of property management experience on the property side. I've held every position, admin, property manager, regional director, and I closed out that portion of my career as a VP of operations for a large management company. So I'm well-versed at all levels when it comes to property management. I had the pleasure of joining Coast to Coast last year as their EVP of Business Development and Client Relations, of course, because I understand the client very well. And I have a lot of working experience with engineers and law attorneys and our owners representatives, throughout the industry. So I understand both sides very, very well. Coast to Coast has been in business down here for over 35 years. We're privately owned. We focus on these capital projects. Is exactly what we execute on, right? So all of your exterior envelope work, concrete restoration, your painting, your stucco, your waterproofing, everything we're going to talk about, everything in your SIRS for the most part, is what we specialize in. And we've done a great job of building relationships and collaborating with condo associations, with management companies, and your hired professionals to make sure that we are executing these projects successfully. We are, again, specialists in this coastal South Florida environment. It is very different than other parts of Florida and the United States. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
We're excited. Super. James, you get to play cleanup here. Good afternoon, my friend.
Well, Audrey's a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. Well, look, thanks guys for having us on this webinar. We really appreciate the opportunity. We're honored to be here. Thank you for all the work that you put into organizing this event. We know what it takes to do this type of stuff, and it's definitely appreciated. My name is James LeGreca. I like to call myself the founder and CEO of LG Consultants, also known as LGC. We are an owner representation project management firm. And basically what that means is we manage large-scale projects, specifically capital improvement projects for condominium associations and homeowner associations. We manage these projects on behalf of ownership, meaning with ownership's best interest in mind. We're primarily consultants, but we're also project managers in the sense that we manage every nut and bolt of the process from conception to completion. There are instances where we're pulled into the project at various stages, and we're happy to hit the ground running. We are best positioned if the earlier we're brought on. About my background specifically, I've been in the owner representation field for about 12 years. Prior to owner representation, I come from the world of construction. I am a licensed general contractor, certified construction manager. I'm also certified in post-tension cable inspections, OSHA 30 certified, and a bunch of other certifications in the world of construction I won't bore you with. My whole life has been construction. I started in the industry at a very young age, working for my father's roofing and siding business in New York, and eventually segued into general contracting with him. Started my own company at about the age of 30, moved to Florida around 34 years of age, and started doing construction and owner representation here. I've been doing it for about 20 years here collectively. I am also formally educated in architecture. I carry a master's in architecture, and I've had the pleasure of teaching at the university level at FIU and Miami-Dade College in the architecture department in both. Not for the money, by the way, for the love of it. But we love what we do. We have a great team. 100% of our clients, again, are condo associations and homeowner associations. So we have learned how to navigate through the complex process of planning, pre-construction, construction administration, and closeout. If it's done properly, you will have a successful outcome. If you do not plan properly, well, it'll be the opposite.
It'll be
careful.
We'll talk about that. So just as we get into it, guys, and I wanted to do just sort of a minute here. And I think, James, you just hit it for you. Cesar, just tell us what the role is of the engineer of record or the design professional in a project. From 30,000 feet, what's your role?
It's literally perform a condition assessment of the property. Again, establishing what are the issues that are happening in that project at the moment. So again, providing walkthroughs based on those walkthroughs. And again, sometimes our walkthroughs, visual inspections, some other times there are more in detail investigations, like destructive testing that are required. So we can literally come up with a list of issues that are happening in that particular project at the time.
And then once you identify that list of issues, what do you do with that? What do you produce from that?
There are several stages, and again, very important to identify the issues. Very important, and like I tell all the associations that I work with, access. You need to give us access to provide full inspections, because the more we can inspect, the tighter our documents are going to be. So from the inspections, we provide a scope of work. Okay.
Yeah.
And then that scope of work is going to become part of a bid document. And then that bid document is what's going to be put out to the
And
contract.
sent to me.
Correct.
Correct.
And then let's just jump into that. So Audrey, what is the contractor's role on a capital project?
So to Cesar's point, right, he prepares the bid package. Hopefully he's working in conjunction with the association and the owner's representative. It comes to the general contractor, goes to bid. Most times, especially in large capital projects, there is a pre-bid walkthrough. So we'll go to the property with your hired professionals, and we are going to walk the job site to make sure that we, as the contractor, if there's anything that we see from, from our field experience that maybe are not captured in the specifications, or we want clarification from those bid specifications, we're taking that opportunity to get those questions answered, and that we're all understanding and bidding on the same understanding of the scope of work, right? So
to summarize it and let's say if I'm getting this right, so Cesar and his team are inspecting it, specifying it, designing it. Audrey, you're building it.
right.
And James, you're coordinating it, so it's all
Right.
happening, right?
He's first bidding it, then building it.
For sure. And just so I want to keep it moving for the audience
Yes.
here,
Mhm.
that to James is, so we understand what everyone's doing. And this is oftentimes a hard thing for boards to get their head around, like what Cesar's role is on a job as the engineer versus the contractor oftentimes is confused. And they
Right.
say, well, isn't the contractor just going to go do that
No.
versus the engineer? And I think this is important. And James, so I'm just sort of turning to you to structure this a bit, is that when do you hire each team member and how they come onto the project?
When they hire each team member, how those teams.
When do you hire? Yeah, when do you hire them in terms of bringing them into the process? Sequence.
Okay. And you're referring to the various trades that may need to be involved to bring the project to fruition.
Sure. Okay. But generally, from you've got an association that's got a facade restoration project to take on, right? And you're going to need an engineer, you're going to need a contractor. Who comes first? Is it the chicken or the egg? Like, how does that work for you?
Well, we always recommend bringing your owner rep in first. The owner rep will help the client select the best design professional, as we like to call them, which could be an engineer, a structural engineer, a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer. It could be a civil engineer, an aquatic engineer, an architect, an interior designer, whatever that design professional of record is for this particular type of endeavor needs to be selected through a competitive RFP process. We facilitate that. So it's always best to bring your owner rep on first, and then have your owner rep first identify what the deficiencies are from a global perspective, then identify all the players that are needed and help the client solicit proposals and ultimately get those players under contract. Once your design team is in place, like Cesar mentioned, it's his opportunity to step in and take a global scope and define it into a specific scope. And I'll back him up 100% when he talks about a large sampling, right? A large percentage of inspection. There's only 3 components to any given project, folks. It's scope, time, and money, and they're all directly correlated. If you do not properly define your scope with a high level of certainty out of the gate, you are destined for failure when it comes to the money component and the timing component. Make sense? So it's important at that point in time that the engineer of record, structural engineer in this case, because you use the restoration to a facade as an example, does a thorough inspection of a larger percentage, not just 10%, larger percentage of the facade, identifies all the deficiencies and puts adequate quantities against those deficiencies so that Audrey then can come in and bid a project that actually has an adequate scope and not come in with a real low number and the rest of the project goes through change order. Nobody likes that. It's a mismanagement of expectations for the entire community, the board, management, et cetera. The best way to get ahead of it is to do it properly out of the gate.
And believe it or not, it is beneficial for everyone because it also gives me as a general contractor a true depiction of the cost of the job and the resources that I have to apply there, right? So everyone is budgeting their time and resources. Cesar's doing that because he's going to have to perform his property inspections. James is going to do that because he's allocating time and how he's going to manage a project. And same for us, right? Our manpower, our equipment. So all of that is really important for everyone to be successful.
And to just drill into that for a second. So again, today we have limited time, so we could spend 3 hours on design in and of itself. But as we think about the phases of a project, from concept to design to bid to construction to closeout, right? If we just think about that from 30,000 feet, when I think about the players for our associations, and the thing that they get tripped up on is understanding prior to bidding, James, just how many players could or can be involved. So if we're doing a lobby renovation and an elevator upgrade, right, you can have elevator consultant, you could have acoustic consultant, you could have interior designer, and then you could have a structural engineer, right? And all before you have a general contractor on board, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What you want to do is first you want to identify the needs and you want to identify the wants, right? Because they're coming from two different approaches, so to speak. If there's certain mandates in place that are prompting a capital improvement project in a particular community, that's a need. If there's beautification that the client wants to implement while they're performing this restoration project, I call that while you're at it syndrome, right? While we're at it, let's go ahead and beautify. So you see that a lot with ELSS. If ELSS needs to be implemented in a particular building, they'll say, well, look, while we're putting all these systems into the corridors, let's beautify it in the interim, which is fine. But they're two different approaches. They're different budgetary approaches and they're different approaches to project participant selection, which is what I call that, Alex, because your question is geared specifically toward identifying the players and engaging the players. In order to identify the players, you have to look at the scopes of work and what design professionals or independent third-party consultants are required to bring the scope to fruition. What I mean by that is to clearly define the scope, that scope definition. That's the most important part of the puzzle. And the only way to clarify with a high level of certainty is to put all the appropriate professionals in place. You rattled off a few. You talked about elevator consultants, you have ELSS engineers, you have aquatic engineers, interior designers, structural engineers. I can go on and on and on. At the end of the day, step one is identify the scope. Generally speaking, step two is identify the players, get those players under contract, perform those inspections, get those bid docs and specs queued up for each one of the scopes from each one of the professionals and get them out to the market for competitive bidding. And that's the process from a 10,000 foot overview.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of us, and I'm going to go to Audrey because I have a question from just me, James, when you think about, but I think one thing that's really unique, and again, for associations, is that Cesar and I go back longer than I want to admit, but it's almost 3 decades. That when we started in this business, when I started, there were no consultants. It was the architect was in charge of everything and the general contractor did everything, right? That was it. They were like, or a structural engineer. They were like 3 players and that was it. And the food chain was very small. I think today we've really, really grown. And I think, again, for our volunteer boards who have never done a huge capital project, I don't think they even recognize sometimes how many players need to come in from the beginning? So again, James, I think your ability to help identify to those associations early on, hey, you want to do this, but you need to accomplish that. Here's the number of players that could be involved that you might not even be thinking about. So I think that's important. And Audrey,
Yeah,
oh, Maureen.
as an added value, also, again, management is also in charge of, again, the communication with the membership, with the board. So when you put all the players together, you want to over communicate with your membership, either through town halls. I mean, we have several cases that we worked in conjunction, even with James and his crew, is do those town hall meetings. Let the owners know where we are, because expectations are so critical in this process, especially when you're starting and you have these huge capital projects that people think it's like, oh, well, it's a design. This happens in a month and we'll do the RFP, and so simple. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
So when you define that timeline and work with your team and put that in front of the membership, I think that's much more appreciated by the owners, and because they want to know where their investment is going
Well,
to.
what I always say as well is that the management team knows the dynamic, the personality of the community is really important, right? What resonates, are you seasonal? Are you not seasonal? Where are critical areas? All the nuances of the building for us to kind of set up logistically and how we need to coordinate, right? So it really is, everyone has to work. We all have our strengths, right? And our expertise, and we have to work together as one team for the association.
And it's so obvious. I'm going to come to a similar question to that towards the end, but I wanted to go to Audrey, and I think that one thing that we see oftentimes as we're building these teams are contractors are just not created equal, folks. They're just not. You have different pricing, you have different pricing models, you have different ways that you do things, you have different strengths and weaknesses. And I'm not here to, this isn't a sales pitch, I think, but Audrey, talk to us just for a minute about, as a contractor, what you're really looking at when you see the design and you see these bid documents being brought out for you to bid on, and trying to bring the best product, back to James and that association that you can bid on. What are the things that are important for you to see in this process?
Well, to Cesar's point, right, and to James's point, is the scope, that the work is well detailed, well designed, and in the specifications of how we're supposed to execute each line item in your bid form, a thorough bid form, right, that is taken into consideration the different conditions that we can encounter as we're doing the job, right? Like, to us, sometimes that's a red flag, right? That, we're bidding on something and we know we're going to encounter this issue, right? Whether it could be the thickness of stucco, it could be, there's a number of things that it could be, but making sure that there is a thorough bid form, that we know we're going to encounter certain conditions and that there's a unit cost for that. Again, that, things are being addressed early on the plans when we're on the property as far as access, or maybe there was something that wasn't considered, maybe the sentence wasn't complete as far as, is it all parapet walls, partially parapet walls, being very clear on the material that's being used. Sometimes they'll say replace the paver. Well, is it like for like? What are we doing? So making sure that we are being very clear so that we're all bidding on the same thing is what I was going back to before, because that is, are we all providing the same warranty, right? I may be providing a 20-year warranty, which is going to be more expensive than a 10-year warranty, right? That we're bidding the same system. Are they, whether it's a waterproofing system, or we may value engineer it, right? So are we submitting our RFI? So those are the things that I think help us level the bid process, and we communicate with the engineer, we communicate with the owner's rep when we see something, we have a question. And I think it just helps return a better product to our clients.
I want to drill down on that for a second with James and Cesar. You made me think of it, Audrey. So you put a bid out on the street, you're asking for a type of work to be done. Again, could be facade, could be windows, could be hallways, could be any number of things, folks. Again, we're not picking on just CERS stuff. It could be non-CERS.
Yeah. Anything.
So when we think about that, and James, and that bid form comes back to you, and you see that the contractor has suggested a change from what the engineer has specified, what do you do with that? What does an association do with that?
Yeah, we're very receptive to open specifications. We think that keeping the specification open, quote unquote, is a good thing for the client. I'll tell you why. Some contractors have great relationships with certain waterproofing manufacturers, as an example. So CTC may have a really good relationship with a particular manufacturer, and they may be able to capitalize on that relationship, thereby lowering a big ticket line item in their bid and positioning them better for the overall bid that they submit. They should price the specified material, but offering an alternative is always well received by us as owner reps, because it gives us an opportunity to see how it moves the financial needle in favor of our client. And at the end of the day, if they get the job due to the fact that this very large ticket item, let's say waterproofing example, brings down their aggregate bid, well, then good for them, right? There's nothing wrong with that, as long as there's no quality compromise, no warranty compromise, the engineer of record is okay with this alternative material, et cetera, et cetera. You always should start with some sort of benchmark material, but I like to keep the bid open for specifications, because you never know what type of rabbit a contractor can pull out of the hat, so to speak, with good relationships that they have with manufacturers and suppliers and so on. Why not capitalize on it?
100%. So Cesar, let me ask that to you. With the advent of SIRS and milestones and research and way more stringent statutory requirements and code requirements for buildings today than we had 5 years ago, for sure, forget 10. When you see these changes to bids and you see these product submissions or value engineering, VE items, is that giving you more work? Are you okay with that? Or is it hard to make changes now because the statutory requirements are so stringent that changing your design is hard to do? How do you respond?
Well, I mean, again, we are very open to changes, because again, the one thing that it's an issue throughout are the budgets, so we are very cognizant of that, and so we are open to opportunities where we can have savings while we are achieving good product utilization, and that we have the same warranty requirements, right? But we are open to different materials. But what we want to see first is for them to bid the spec, because that way we can literally match apples to apples. Because what happens, in a bid review process, is that we are literally reviewing the different line items from 3 or 4 different contractors. So if they all have different materials, it's going to be very hard for us to review and compare, right? So we want to make sure that we have a baseline.
Yep.
And then that baseline is going to be the same across the board. And then, yes, we go to the alternate, and we can then go to the owner's rep and the board and say, look, we are truly, these are the 2 best prices, right? But this contractor X has an opportunity of giving you additional savings if we go with this material, which, by the way, is going to perform the same and give you the same warranty.
Exactly.
So
Well said.
let me just tug on that thread a bit with all 3 of you, that we're getting through bid. We have a multi-million-dollar project on the table. We have some value engineering or some opportunity for an association to potentially maybe save some money. I'm not sure if it's time yet, but certainly save some money. Are we thinking about those cost savings in relationship to how that product will weather, how long it will last, what future maintenance requirements of it. Talk to me about that, guys. Are you thinking about that when you're looking at those?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
We look at all of that, right?
Good.
Longevity or anticipated longevity, warranties, maintenance or lack thereof, everything that a consumer might want to consider when purchasing something large. We get all that information with that for them by communicating with the contractors, by communicating with the engineers and the manufacturers and the suppliers and all that. So we can say, hey, Mr. Client, here's all the facts so you can make a well-informed, timely decision, option A, B, and C, and what's behind, door A, B, and C, if you get my point.
Yeah, I would like to also encourage, as we're talking about the bid form, because sometimes, they do come back a little off, right? And it's hard to understand, why some line items across the bidders are off. So I really do always recommend that you take the time to meet with the general contractors and walk through their bids. Tell them to explain their numbers to you. How did you arrive at these numbers? What are these costs? A lot of information comes out of those. There's some value engineering that also comes out of there. But, take the time to, again, it's a multi-million-dollar project, to invest the time in understanding how they're arriving at these numbers, right?
And so let's go a little further down the road. So you've successfully won the job, Audrey, and
Yes,
James,
I like that.
you're getting ready to go to construction, and Cesar, you're ready with your cans of red and orange spray paint to get on the side of the building to mark it up. This is someone's home. This is not a construction site. This is different from new construction where we're building ground up and no one lives there. Talk to me about sort of the sensitivities that you guys are thinking about as you approach an existing building where people live and work, and how that's different for you from maybe just building a ground up new building when you bid that job.
Well, for starters, Alex, you said now we're ready to start marking things up. And unfortunately, for that big document to be really tight, and this is an issue, and that's why I said a very well thought out, thorough inspection process. We should be marking before we start building, because
Fair enough. I'm just skipping ahead for our listeners that we've gotten through that, and you did that, but now you're ready to go to work, right? It's 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning, and somebody lives in that unit.
I'm going to take that question because I'm the one that has to face the residents while we're doing on a daily basis, right? So we've been awarded the job. Wonderful. First order of business is getting with your owner's representative, with the management team, and walking your property and going through the phasing plan that we presented. And logistically, what is this going to look like as far as how we're going to mobilize on your property? And what considerations do we need to take into advisement, right? So again, like I said, what's the length of the project? Do we need to maybe start on a different side that we originally proposed? Maybe we're going to ramp up and have more men so that we can finish faster. We want to start during a certain season. So there's a lot of information that in a kickoff meeting, a pre-construction meeting that we have with the on-site team, so that we're taking all of these things into consideration, proactively communicating to the residents of, when they should anticipate us working on their side, advance notice. A lot of, we live in a very desirable place. This is people's second, third homes, vacation homes. So, the worst thing could be I'm set up to come down for the winter and now I can't go on my balcony or can't use my pool, right? So there's going to be inconveniences. I will challenge you a little bit. It is construction, whether it's new or restoration. So we need to embrace that, and how can we minimize feeling like we're in a construction zone? Well, we are, right? We're being overseen by your local municipality. We have engineers, we have permits open. So we are in a construction site. Sure. There's, lots that go into that. So really working with the team there. actively communicating with the residents of what they should anticipate as we move through their property, right? And again, how quickly can we get amenities if we're working on amenity areas or have to close down, how quickly we can get them reopened, and try not to make it feel like a total construction zone, and that there's still areas of enjoyment for the residents, and lots of communication. So again,
James?
that it's collaborative. If there's concerns,
Right.
we want everyone to feel things happen, right? Someone left their lunch somewhere, like there's little things that communicate that to us. We want to do a good job. We want to be professional. We want to try to keep your property as tidy as possible while we're out there. So again, communication, it's a partnership. And I think that tone needs to be set from the very beginning.
Yeah, I would second everything Audrey said. Communication is definitely key to a project's success, even if, because you have two types of success, right? You have perceived success and you have reality success. And they're both equally important, right? Because perception is reality. So how do you get people's perception on the successful side of the spectrum? Well, it's through ample communication regarding what would dictate the way a project unfolds. Because Alex, to your point earlier, yes, this is a fully occupied building with residents, with employees, vehicles and pets and so on. And it's a delicate dance around people's lives. So what we like to do as owner reps is we like to take the temperature of the community, right? What's most important to you folks, right? For those seasonal buildings out there, right? Audrey mentioned whether a building is seasonal or not. The importance of as much work getting done when season is at a low point is key to them. That means they don't want to lose amenities. So how do you sequence the project and maintain a certain level of amenity throughout the course of the project? There's very creative ways to do that. Do you start on a particular facade at a particular time of year to not take that amenity away during quote unquote season? Is it all about money? Is it all about time? Or is it all about loss of amenities? What's most important to the client? You need to understand that, and then you can lay out the groundwork. And it's a thoughtful approach versus just hey, this is how we're doing it, take it or leave it.
I didn't want to drill down too far on money today, because I think that's a whole nother webinar. But one of the things for James and Audrey that I wanted to just touch on is, so Maureen brought it up. We do town halls. We're being proactive. We do presentations. We send out schedule updates. We have reports, all that. How do you communicate, in your opinion, sort of best practice, how you're doing from a cost perspective on a job? Because so many of these projects are time and material, the unit costs, they're not lump sum. So how do you do that and get people to understand where they are and what they have to pay for?
Well, for starters, you have to set realistic benchmarks out of the gate, not just with money, but with time. But since we're talking about money, let's just talk about that. How do you set a realistic benchmark? That goes back to scope definition. First and foremost, defining that scope with high level of certainty. Secondarily, adding the appropriate contingencies and being mentally and financially prepared for a large endeavor. Because if you're not mentally and financially prepared for this endeavor, and the budget is set too low, or there's no contingency, or the contingency is a very small percentage, et cetera, then what's going to happen? You're never going to be quote unquote within budget. How can you be? If it was inadequate out of the gate, substantially inadequate, I don't care if you have 100% contingency, you're going to miss your mark. The community has to be realistic with the magnitude of the scope, and the only way that they can be realistic with that and the cost associated with it is if it's explained to them in an easily receivable format so they can understand what they're against, scope-wise, time-wise, money-wise. It's not always a tough pill to swallow, but I've been on the receiving end of that information. I lived in a condo for 18 years. I want the truth. I don't want somebody to come in and be the bearer of good news just so that I can hear what I think I want. I want somebody to come in and be the bearer of reality. What are we up against truly? And if those benchmarks are realistic, you'll stay within those financial parameters.
Go ahead,
Audrey.
I just want to add, it's not one of those situations where you cross your fingers and hope for the best, right? And I get it. It is a big pill to swallow, but I've seen it too many times in my entire career where you start with let's say we're reacting to a repair and the project grows, right? You mentioned it earlier, James, of the add-ons, but really find out everything that needs to be done, and swallow the pill. You know what the big number is, and then if finances are truly a challenge in your scenario, then start scaling down your project. But really, to your point, know what you're up against, and then start to kind of chunk it down of either how you can phase out the entirety of the project or what is a must and want, right? So
1000%. That's exactly what you have to do.
Yeah.
Establish the magnitude and then scale it down if need be.
And it is very important, and I think I've said it 20 times. Scope definition, people need to understand that you cannot save on that initial condition assessment. Because if you think you're saving and you're telling your engineer, oh, let's just do a little inspection so we can put together a scope of work. Whatever you think you're saving, those are going to be massive change orders in the future. You have to have a thorough inspection program and condition assessment program to begin with, so you can have an adequate scope of work.
I always say do the math, right? If you know you have a $10 million project, right, and it's going to cost your engineer a few more hours, take his billable rate, and what's that percentage against the project you're about to go up against? It really kind of puts things in perspective for you, that it's a reasonable cost to pay to.
Well, and I think oftentimes, again, our boards and our stakeholders struggle with, this is something we do every day, and we get it. And they have done this never in their lives probably, and certainly aren't looking forward to it. And I think the piece of explaining that, Cesar, to your point of doing more upfront, being way over investigatory prior to actually asking a contractor for work, and doing that, James, this is where you really come in, and a board needs to see that independent third-party person who is leading the charge to say, it's not management, it's not the engineer, it's not the contractor, it's the actual condition at that community for that project that needs more time from the professionals, everyone included, to get you to more certainty. Yeah. And I think that's one thing we're really looking for.
One of the examples that I see all the time is balconies. A lot of those balconies are tiled, and I tell them, if you want me to tell you what the condition of that balcony is, I need to remove some tiles. And they jump up and down, but unfortunately, I cannot tell you what is the condition of that structure underneath that tile if it's not removed. It is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to be ugly, but it will give you an accurate depiction of what your structure is, so that scope can be properly defined.
Yeah, agreed. We always tell our clients about the tiles have to come off, folks. You cannot properly inspect, you cannot properly remediate, you cannot properly waterproof without the removal of tiles. If you choose not to do that, right, because ultimately the decision is in the hands of the board of directors, it will bite you in the butt down the road. It is the right approach. Remove, inspect, remediate, waterproof, press, reset.
James, and I think you said it very accurately in the beginning of the webinar, which I'm surprised we're at 45 minutes. Bringing you the earlier, the better, because again, you are there to. It's not, it's management fault, or it's the board wants to go ahead and push this project, because no, it's bringing you to go ahead and give the actual facts and I've seen you at work, and we've been in town halls, and you're like, no, this project is not going to take 6 months. It's taking 2 years. And everyone's like, wait, what? Absolutely. So it's not an easy thing, but it's also important that the constant communication is out there. And again, the information is there because it belongs to the stakeholders. It belongs that they have this information, and it's how you communicate. And I think bringing all the experts, and I think that's the value of management, is to bring all the experts in front of the community and help, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that value of the community value continues to go up and not decrease. right?
Yep.
So
absolutely.
bring the experts. So Alex, James.
No,
wanted to point that
it's
out.
definitely, and in the interest of time, and I'm gonna try and wrap a bunch of these questions that I saw in the chat into this last question for everybody. So we'll give everybody a chance to answer this. What are associations not thinking about, highest level for you all, that they should be when getting ready to do a capital project? What are they missing most? Start with Audrey, ladies first.
Ladies first. That they're not, I think sometimes they don't I don't want to say that they don't understand. I don't think they can they've wrapped their mind around the magnitude of the job sometimes, right? And so, and how long the process can be moving from one phase to the next, and so people, and I get it, you're severely interrupted in your day-to-day life. It's disruptive. So I think understanding that, they don't really grasp, why it can't move faster. And, I think having a better understanding of how projects are phased and sequenced and how inspections have to get done. And sometimes there's punch out lists. Like, we're not just there, painting and slapping on products, it all ties in. There's Cesar told me how I have to apply this product. Then I have to do it in phases, right? And so he has to come and check every step of the way to make sure that we are doing what we're contracted to do, and that at the end of the project, I can close this up and hand you a warranty. So I don't think they realize there's, all of the nuances that go into completing the job.
Schedule. Cesar, what are you seeing?
Say the first thing that a lot of the properties are not doing, they don't have their original construction documents. And I don't care if the building is 30, 20, 40, 50 years old. If you can get a hold of those documents, please do, because that is going to help us understand how your building was put together, and again, come up with solutions that are more tailored to your building.
James?
Well, what most communities fail to realize is the importance of planning / pre-construction, right? What is planning? Well, planning is the opportunity, it's due diligence, right? It's the opportunity to understand needs and wants. It's an opportunity to collect all the information relative to the project or projects and come up with a global approach to get through the next phase, which is pre-construction. What's pre-construction? It's every task that must be performed prior to commencing construction, meaning you cannot avoid doing it. You could do it poorly, but you can't avoid doing it. And if you don't do it well, you're destined for failure. The importance of planning and pre-construction is far greater than the importance of construction itself. Because if you plan properly and you go through the pre-construction process properly, you will set yourself up for success. And that's the biggest issue that we see, that the communities don't understand the value in it because they don't understand it, period. And it's our job to help them understand. Yeah. There's a lot of times that the planning and pre-con process could actually take longer than the construction, believe it or not. But it's important. It pays dividends, folks. You really need to lay the groundwork.
I think that all equally important. And I think from what we see a lot, especially being sort of first in the door because we're managing, right, is soft costs are often grossly underestimated on projects and really drive overall project costs. So James, to your point, that initial planning, that initial idea of schedule, the initial idea of beginning, middle, and end of this, and every cost from bond to loan to inspection to permits to temporary services to insurance. There are just so many things depending on your project that the contractor, the engineer, and the OPM, aren't necessarily bringing, in that first initial thought that an association has. And I see a lot of times where people are just shocked by what the soft costs piece of this are, so this is one thing. I want to say thank you to everybody. We said we would keep it to 50 and we were just at. Maureen, anything we need to do to wrap it up?
Any additional, I think that we have some questions, but we answered them throughout, and some opinions here, but I think also, again, just a small little detail about, soft cost. For us in management, that is the one that is hard for the membership to understand.
Yeah.
I think when you go to the end game and you say, okay, this is the financial, this is what we're gonna do, it's like, oh my gosh, $2 million in soft costs, they don't get it.
They only
So-
are acceptable to like our cost, thank goodness. But yes,
Yes,
like there's a
so-
project manager cost, there's the engineering cost, there's
Correct.
administrative cost,
Yeah.
your legal, your attorney looking over your contract and your
Everything.
documents.
Correct.
100%.
So I think, again, the more we prepare the membership and educate the membership and bring all the experts and have everyone in the table talking to the ownership and not just a board, again, it's not just the board, because the boards are here to make the decision, but it's the owners, because those are the ones that are going to be working and they're going to be having that, painter in their balcony, right? But the earlier stages, I think we put everything together. It's the best practices and how you hit a home run or a goal or all that good stuff. I have to bring sports in. I'm sorry, gentlemen.
Right.
and
No,
ladies.
thank you very much, everybody. We really appreciated this. For anybody watching, anybody who has questions, looking for contact, we will be happy to share that with everybody. And again, thanks a million, guys, and we'll see you again soon.